Brian, a lot of coaching news to talk about in the Colorado Buffaloes program. It's been an eventful couple days.
Yeah, it has been, and I know a lot of fans have been waiting for that Coach Prime extension. That's not it. There's other things that are going on right now, and it's clear that right now, I think if people watch social media and TV, it looks like Coach Prime's focus is on Super Bowl and Media Row this week, but his focus within this staff is building this staff and rewarding his staff and getting that taken care of. I think before himself.
When Marshall Faulk, when I first heard that he was going to be the new running backs coach in Boulder, I had to kind of pinch myself. It was like, Brian, this is the third Hall of Famer we're going to get a chance to interview. He has not been a longtime coach, obviously, but you've got Tommy Robinson working there in tandem.
Mhm.
And we'll get to the offensive line situation with the coaching situation that's going to go there forward. But with running back, I feel like you've got a good duo there.
Yeah, absolutely. And there isn't really any coaching in Falk's background, but just because you haven't coached doesn't mean you can't teach and that you can't lead a group of young men. I mean, I think yeah, there was a story that came out this year, just a few weeks ago when Saquon Barkley had that big game in the snow. He said he talked to Marshall Falk and got some advice on some things. And so when a guy like Saquon Barkley is going to take advice from Marshall Falk, I think Brandon Hood and Micah Welch and guys like that can take advice from Marshall Falk. And I agree with you. I like the duo of Marshall Falk and Tommy Robinson. Falk, who doesn't have that experience as a coach, but obviously a fantastic player. Tommy Robinson's got decades of experience as a coach. I think they can be a good duo together and bounce ideas off each other. And a guy like Tommy Robinson can help Marshall Falk in his new journey into coaching.
Yeah, and my first reaction was after that was I remember watching Marshall Falk, and he was a boss
Yeah.
as a running back, and he always, as he said, was kind of a student of the game and learned ways to attack different defenses. He was very physically gifted, but I think that student of the game aspect is what took Marshall Falk to that next level. And so I would not be surprised if he has a similar revelation that Warren Sapp had last year of like getting around these young kids, feeding off that energy, and really thriving in that role. But I based on what I saw him say on Super Bowl Roll last yesterday, is that maybe there's just a little bit of hesitation about coaching. But like I think once he gets in his veins, it's going to be game over.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people, and he's clearly one of them. I think you and I, it sounds like we must have seen like the same interview, where he was like coaching, nah, but mentoring these young kids. But there's so many people we've seen that, and Marshall Falk said this. He goes, "Look, Coach Prime's a friend, and whatever I can do to help him out, I want to do." How many people have said that, right? And we've seen it from Warren Sapp and Michael Irvin, Chad Ochocinco, guys like that are not on the staff, but they want to be around and help out. Terrell Owens, guys like that, whatever they can do to help Coach Prime, and so I think it's another guy that speaks to how well liked Coach Prime is among his peers in the football community, and that says a lot about a person, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's the people that are football people that see what
Yeah,
Coach Prime has done in Boulder, and they take notice of it. And that also led to Andre Giroud coming back to Boulder as a co-offensive line coach, and he was a two-time All Big 12 selection, a
yeah,
unanimous All-American in 2001, the last time the Buffaloes won a conference championship. And he's been somebody that has played guard center in the NFL, has gone on to coaching the XFL. Uh, I know he interviewed for that head coaching job there for the offense, not head coaching job, but offensive line job. And
yeah.
to be able to come on board as Gunnar White's number two with George Hageman, I think is going to be a big addition for this group.
Yeah, Garrod recently named to the Colorado Athletics Hall of Fame, and one of the great buffs, and he's cut his teeth coaching in the XFL, like you mentioned, the last couple of years, and clearly a guy that is interested in coaching it and wants to take that next step. And it's another one of those guys again that has been there and done that. And guys want to listen to people that have been there and done that. How many times did we hear that from the defense? This last year from the front seven talking about Warren Sapp and Damian Lewis. Like, well, yeah, when the guy's been there, that you want to learn from that. And Shiloh Sanders and Cam Sumon Craig would talk about it. I know he's not a player, but they would talk about Robert Livingston, who I know we're going to talk about here soon. And he's been in the NFL, right? And Shiloh has said a lot of times, like, look, he knows what I need to do to get there, and so I'm going to listen to him. And so when there's people that have been there and done that, you're going to listen to them. And so, if you're an offensive lineman, why would you not listen to Andre Garrott? And when he tells you do it this way, because he did it that way, and look what he did.
So this offensive line group going to be led by Gunnar White
Yeah.
with George Hageman and Andre Garrod. Hageman would be more of a natural fit to work with the tackles. I know he played guard as well in
Mhm.
college, but Garrod was an interior guy, played center and guard. And I would imagine then Gunnar White kind of oversees those guys, if you had to guess.
Yeah, I would think so. I'm curious how that structure actually is going to work, but I think it's clear that they're well, at least in my mind, it's clear that they really liked that trio they had with the defensive line last year with Sapp and Dancy and Damian Lewis, and maybe they're trying to recreate that type of thing with the offensive line where, um, there's three different voices and different people you can learn from, and obviously the rules allow more guys to get in there and coach, and so I think when you've got three that can work with a group like that, yeah, it's a lot of people, but that's been the biggest problem area, right? And one of the most important areas on a football team is offensive line. And if you can got three guys in there, working with them, I think that's a good thing. And it is one unit, but I think guard is very different from tackle, and I think both are very different from center in a lot of ways. And so, you have some different types of maybe one-on-one instruction that you might not have had if you only have one guy there.
I'm glad you brought up that defensive front last year and kind of the coaching element there. I saw an interview with Warren Sapp on Super Bowl Row yesterday where he was talking about how much he loved working with Warren Sapp and Vincent Dancy. And
Yeah.
I really think that trickles down. That camaraderie within the staff helped lead Colorado to lead the Big 12 in quarterback sacks this past season. I think they were number one in forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. That group was wreaking havoc more so than maybe we anticipated coming into the season. And I think the coaching being aligned helped with that. And so that brings me to the point, Brian, that you gotta stay away from too many cooks in the kitchen in this new era of college football where it sounds like there's going to be a lot more coaches that are allowed on the field working with these players. That's what it comes down to. If those three guys mesh well, then you've got a great team. If you
Yeah.
don't, then you don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned earlier, we know that Andre he interviewed for that job previously. I think he's probably been around Gunner and George Hageman, so they've probably seen them be able to mesh a little bit, and so look, Coach Prime reads people, right? And I think that he would not bring Andre in if he didn't think he was going to mesh well with the guys he has there. Now, that doesn't always work out, but I think that there's clearly a feeling he has that this is going to work out and this is the right system for the offensive line. And look, maybe there's we know this from all the years we've covered this, but like different players respond to different types of coaching as well. And so there might be a style that Andre has that's very different from Gunnar White and George Hageman, that maybe that really speaks to Cardi Smith, more than somebody else, and so maybe Jordan Seaton responds really well to what he hears from George Hageman, but not as much from a Gunnar White. I'm just throwing, I don't know how he responds to stuff, but there's different ways of the guys listen to coaching. And so I think when you have different voices, and it's a big group. The offensive line is one of the biggest groups, position groups on the team, right? And so there's usually 15, 16 guys in there. And so, I don't think three head coach or three coaches in there is too many. I think that there's a good mix of what can be there and help that unit out.
You mentioned George Hilo. He's going to take over the edge group. I don't know if we've talked about that together. This was somebody that was Robert Livingston's right hand man, and he's going to be our next topic on this video here. Uh, they had to keep him on staff, I felt like, after last
Yeah.
season with what he contributed.
Yeah. And it looks like he's going to step into that role that Vincent Dancy had, right? And
Right.
coach the edge guys. And George Hilo is a guy that when he was brought on last year in the fall, it was like, whoa, that's a really nice addition. This is a guy that's been at Michigan. He's been I know he was at Colorado State before. He's been around a little bit, and so that's a veteran quality coach. And there were players last year we asked about. What kind of impact has George Hilo had? And they spoke very highly of him, and so yeah, you get another guy that you mentioned meshing that meshes well. You already know him, and he meshes well with Robert Livingston. Keep him on staff.
No doubt. We also have Reggie Calhoun Jr. joining the staff as the
Yeah,
new NIL director, and I had a chance to talk to him earlier this week. I was telling him, you got one of the toughest jobs in America trying to figure out this NIL landscape because it changes almost daily. He had the feel for things as the 5430 Alliance director of NIL last year. I'm anxious to see kind of how this evolves. Colorado definitely projects the NIL factor better than any other program, but
yeah,
that's because it's name, image, likeness. The other schools are just paying guys.
yeah. That's true. And now the the two big NIL guys are gone now. Well, the three are gone now. And so with Shador, Shiloh, and Travis Hunter, but certainly it's a whole different world right now. And there's currently down the state capitol, there's a House bill going in right now that just went through the education committee last night that that they've got to change the law in the state that allows CU and other schools to actually pay the players because it's currently against the law to do that. So they have to change that, and so they're working on getting that through. But there's a lot of legislation that has to happen. We're learning. I think you and I are learning a lot more, legal terms, things like that, and
Yeah.
dealing with a lot more, government issues than we've ever had in the last couple of years. So, I'm still learning some of that stuff. I had to go back to civics class back in high school. Like, okay, how does the bill become a law? Things like that. And so yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's involved with it, and that Reggie Calhoun, he's paying close attention to everything going on down there at the Capitol, and he's going to be on top of it, and it's going to be it's here to stay. They're going to be paying players, things like that, and so you have to have a guy like Reggie Calhoun to kind of spearhead that and lead that effort.
I can't count on both hands the number of times, Brian, that I've turned to my wife the last couple of years and just said, I want to just cover football.
Right?
And
Yeah,
NIL is a big part of that. Like it
yeah,
has been this ongoing saga. And like throughout this process that none of it is solidified, right? Because it was just too out there. Like it had to get
yeah.
reined in somehow. And now you've got the Title IX stuff. Like it's gonna probably continue on for I don't know. What do you think? The next 5 years to figure out how this truly works?
I hope it's not that long, but probably. Yeah, there's just a lot of kinks to be ironed out in this whole process, and you think about like pro sports, and clearly, contracts, things like that are part of it. And obviously, they're paying the athletes. I mean, that's pro sports, but there's certain periods of time where there's like a free agency period. You get all that out of the way, and then you get to that point where it's the game, right? And once you get to training camp in the NFL and through the season, you really focus on the football part of it. And I think that in college we haven't really been able to fully do that because they're still during the season. Well, you have to worry about is this guy going to leave and transfer out, during the season? Is it, there's obviously December is crazy because there's bowl games and championships going on, yet people are leaving. So they've got to iron things like that out to get it more like the pro sports model to where, okay, here's the period of time where you deal with the free agency and the contracts, all that stuff, and now it's game time. And pro sports has that. I think college will settle into that. Will it take 5 years? Maybe. Um, I'm going to hope for 2 or 3, but it's certainly not going to happen in 2025.
Yeah. So Robert Livingston is going to be Colorado's defense coordinator, as far as we know, in 2025, and he got a nice bump with his salary.
Mhm.
This was needed for him. It does sound like there were other programs interested in him. He did a great job his first year
Yeah.
in Colorado. You don't want to overextend yourself. So I thought this was a perfect deal for somebody that had proven his worth with the Buffaloes.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, the turnaround that defense made was amazing. I mean, I wrote about it, in my assessment of the season, that this is the first time in the history of the program that total defense improved by more than 100 yards. And that's an amazing number that you dropped 100 yards off of what the total defense was allowed the previous year. It was almost a 12 point per game improvement over the previous year. You mentioned leading the Big 12 in sacks and TFLs, and they forced turnovers, things like that. They just played a different way. I mean, there was a lot of games, Adam, we went into thinking, if the offense doesn't have it today, the defense is going to be just fine. And now there was a costly game in which the defense didn't play well at Kansas, but for the most part, that defense played pretty well. And you could even look at the bowl game. I know it was 36-14, but the defense I thought was okay for a good part of that, for a large part of that bowl game. It's just
They missed Nikai Hill Green in that game,
they did
unfortunately.
miss Hill Green, but that wasn't all the defense's fault. They didn't give up 36 points. I mean, there was a punt
Right.
return in there,
Right.
and some short fields that the BYU had to work with. So even in that game, the defense held its own. And so yeah, Robert Livingston, he deserves it. And I went and looked at some numbers last night. USA Today has the database. There was only 2 coordinators or 2 coaches in the entire Big 12 last year that made more than what he's going to make this next year. One of them was, or both of them were Utah's coordinators, one of which is no longer there, and their new coordinator makes less than Robert Livingston. So Livingston might be the second highest paid coach in the Big 12 this year, assistant coach. So I think it's deserved based on what he's done with Colorado.
When we were at Bill McCartney's celebration of life, Coach Prime and Coach Livingston were sitting right next to each other. You can tell there's a good kindred relationship between those two, and I
Yeah.
think that plays into it. Again, it's a lot about chemistry. It's I know a lot of fans focus on experience, and I don't blame them because you want the attractive resume coming in, you want the established resume coming in, but when you have that cohesiveness on staff, and we saw that last year with them getting to 9 wins, that played a big role. With Marshall Faulk coming on board, Brian, you and I were the first to kind of report that he was likely to going to be the candidate there. Um, there was somebody close to the program that I respect a whole lot and like a whole lot that kind of had some disparaging words as a result of that. Um, it got under my skin, Brian. Like I just, if you're going to give the local media the stiff arm, we don't get traditional signing day press conferences. We don't get regular signing day press conferences. And you and I are on board. And like, just there needs to be a better process in terms of announcing these hires and not villainizing the people that are fully on board covering this Colorado program from a reasonable, respectable standpoint versus those clickbait people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, I think you and I, covered this program for a long time. And, I stand on how I report, and I know you do as well. I mean, if I see you put something out, I know you vetted it and you've got good sources with it. And, I feel the same way with me. I'm not going to put something out unless I've heard from a very, very, very reliable source, or 2 or 3, that this is actually happening. And so yeah, you're the same way. And it was a couple weeks ago that it came out on both of our sites that this was happening, and I was also told, I'm sure you were too at the time, it's probably going to be a couple weeks before it's actually announced, and it was, and um, so yeah, it's an interesting deal covering this program right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's all love. Like I respect Coach Prime so much, and I
Yeah,
love the guys that are around him. It just you've got to have a different process of information towards media.
yeah,
There's not this regular personnel update situation. There's not this regular coaching update situation with the media like we're used to. And frankly, Brian, every other Power Four program in the country has media that is much harsher on these issues than we are. And so that's when some of the pushback really it gets under my skin, like I said.
yeah. I hear you and I understand it, and it's yeah. I think the media covering Colorado is probably more varied than maybe it is in other places because you have there's some media that's actually part of the program really, and
Yeah.
so when things are getting broken by you know a member of the family, so to speak, and or in reality, there's times that we've learned about coaching hires or things like that, or even a new player every once in a while, just by watching well-off media. I mean, I remember when Savion Wilkerson first got to Colorado, it was kind of like, he might be coming to Colorado, and all of a sudden you watch a well-off media video from the summer workout, and like, oh, there's Savion Wilkerson. I guess he's with the Colorado Buffaloes now, and so you have to kind of there's different ways of going about it, and I think you have to there has to be some respect in the different ways everybody goes about it, right? I mean, the way you and I go about it, I think is it's the right way to do it. But I don't think that the others are wrong. I just think that you and I are not doing it the wrong way.
Yeah. I guess the point is when there's a well off media video that shows Savion Wilkerson joining the program, we're not criticizing them. Like,
Right.
I guess that's where I'm going to. Like,
Yeah.
there are haters out there. There like are real haters out there for
Yeah.
Colorado's program. Real haters.
Yeah.
We're not that.
Right.
And focus more of that attention in that direction, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah. I hear you. I agree with you. And um yeah, I knew that got under your skin. We talked about the other day. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a exciting time for Colorado football because you've got these new coaches joining the mix, and we were talking about it on a previous video of all these guys that have joined the program. Brian, when are we going to get together again for another in-person video? We did one just a few days ago,
Yeah.
but
We
I'm looking for Audrey Jane's Pizza, by the way, which you
yeah.
recommended and took me to, was pretty fantastic. My wife, I brought her some leftovers home, and
Yeah.
she was a huge fan.
Was she? Okay. I was
Yep.
curious. I forgot to ask you, but yeah, that's my favorite pizza in Boulder. And it's pretty darn good. So if anybody's looking for good pizza in Boulder, you know, I'm not
Definitely.
being endorsed by them. They're not giving anything, but Audrey Jane's Pizza Garage is pretty fantastic. And yeah, we're gonna have to do something soon. I mean, it's crazy though. Spring ball starts in a little over a month. And so
That's awesome.
it feels like it's in some ways it can feel like a long stretch, but then I was looking at the other day, I'm like, it's only about a month away, a month and 4 days before spring ball, and before you know it, it's like spring ball, spring game, and then you have the summer, and then you're in. I mean, the summer is even short because you have a Big 12 Media Day in there, and there's just things that pop up throughout the summer that'll keep things going. So yeah, it's just full steam ahead. But we're gonna have to get together at some point before spring ball and do some spring previews and things like that.
I look forward to it. Brian, thank you for taking the time out to discuss all of Colorado's new additions here.